man. I do what I do.
In other words, if you're a broke student, if you're a poor person living in the ghetto, financial desperation, you can't make sound choices. They're basically justifying paternalistic approaches to governing the poor. They're justifying social policies that restrict the rights of the poor. And y'all think they're looking for justice. Now, what happens? There are going to be people who advocate for restricting the rights of broke people. And they're going to say, well, this is what we have to do because it's necessary to protect them from these rich people. And how rich is rich? What if you're middle class, you got a job paying you $42,000 a year, and you decide you're a 28-year-old young man, and you decide to date a 20-year-old chick who works at Chick-fil-A, and she only makes $12,000. Comparatively speaking, you're 4 times wealthier than her. So compared to you, she's poor. And you all decide to enter into a consensual sexual relationship, and they say, well, you know what? He had things she didn't have. He had a car, he had an apartment, and she only had sex with him because he had a car and he had an apartment, and he gave her $40. Somebody type $40 for lunch. And she needs to keep having sex with him so she can keep getting that $40. Is that coercion? Do we need to protect this young woman who's 20 and works at Chick-fil-A from this young man who makes $42,000 a year? Well, I would certainly argue that if we're going to protect these poor people, then that's going to give rise to policies that limit their participation in economic or social activities. They can't go to football games. Football games are too expensive. Matter of fact, they can't buy anything but milk, cheese, bread, butter, and chicken in the grocery store because they can't make good decisions. So we're going to limit what they eat. And this includes consensual relationships. I'm not even talking about sexual relationships. We can't allow poor people to be friends with people who have criminal backgrounds because poor people make poor decisions. And those people with criminal backgrounds are not going to be a good influence on them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ban them from being able to speak to each other. Shout out to Latrell Richard. How far does this go? And this is done under the guise of safeguarding them from exploitation. See, there may be a belief that rich people possess greater moral or ethical judgment. And that leads to the idea that they should guide or control the decisions of the less affluent. You all always talking about the elite on here. Y'all love talking about the elite and the bourgeoisie. But at the same time, when you dig down deep into this P. Diddy lawsuit, basically it's saying that rich people are more intelligent, more powerful than poor people. And therefore, when there's a rich person who has sex or does something where a poor person consents, that consent is automatically vitiated. It's all automatically set aside. Because the rich person in that dynamic is the protector, while those in poverty are viewed as incapable of making informed choices. Think about that. Shout out to my man Rich Guy. He said the frivolous Diddy indictment is just more reason for men to become passport bros. They can leverage the system against you at any moment. Yeah, I mean, we've seen it. We see it happening. Shout out to my man Simple Shit TV. We see it happening. But the thing is, we're talking about the erosion of autonomy. Stripping rights from poor people undermines their autonomy and dignity. It suggests that they're incapable of making decisions about their own lives, effectively reducing them to the status of dependency and reinforcing systematic inequalities. If society accepts that poor people should have their rights curtailed, it could lead to a legal framework that codifies these beliefs. And this is going to result in laws that limit the ability of poor people, low-income people, to enter into contracts. Nah, we can't let this poor person buy a car. Better yet, we can't even let this poor person have a Metro pass. Poor people are not allowed to sign off on Metro pass, so you can't take the train or the bus to get to your job. You got to get a rich person to stand by you and be your co-signer. Think about that. Think about that. Setting aside the fact that, consensual relationships, you can't even make your own personal choices. What that would do, it will further entrench them it'll further entrench the economic divides. Rich people and poor people are already separated themselves. You don't go where they go. You don't fly where they fly. You don't eat what they eat. And all this is going to do is more of that. And look at and along with this marginalization comes stigmatization. Because see, this type of viewpoint further stigmatizes poverty, categorizing poor people as others, somebody type others in the chat room, as less deserving of autonomy. And this can perpetuate cycles of marginalization and makes it more challenging for people to escape poverty or assert their rights. Limiting the rights of poor people can hinder their opportunities for advancement. And when people are deprived of that ability to make choices about their life, it stifles their potential growth, education, and financial independence. And look, some of you all understand that this perspective reinforces these negative cultural narratives about poverty, and it suggests that financial status determines a person's worth and capability. And it creates an environment where systematic issues are ignored and personal responsibility is unfairly done away with. You see? Now, when I look at what's going on with this shine, y'all still with me? Hit the number 1 button if you're with me. I done left some of you all in the dust. But it's important we talk about this in a way in which you can digest it. So the actions of the Attorney General in the Southern District of New York, particularly in the case like this one with Sean Combs, it's overzealous. Somebody type overzealous in the chat room. My man Sage talked me that this would limit our poor woman from marrying up. Yes, it would. And she could only marry poor men on her level. Yes, it would. Because in effect, she can never consent. She can't enter into a marriage contract, because if she did, it would deem to be, she just married him for his money. Yeah, right, yeah. That's typically how that goes. She just married him for his money. Yeah, right? So I guess what? We nullify the marriages because she couldn't have possibly consented, because she was under so much financial distress. She had to marry him. What does that do to the autonomy of a person's autonomy? Just because they're poor, they can't consent? Think about that. And somebody says this is a bit extreme. No, this lawsuit against P. Diddy, these criminal charges against P. Diddy, they're a bit extreme. See, again, the actions of the Southern District of New York, the Attorney General's office, particularly in this case, it's overzealous, right? In their attempt to protect people they perceive as vulnerable, they're prosecuting somebody where all the parties actively agreed. And this approach inadvertently perpetuates the very victimization they seek to prevent by reinforcing the idea that poor people are incapable of making their own decisions. They all wanted to go to the freak off. By framing the prosecution as a means of protecting poor women or poor men, the Attorney General's office is the U.S. Attorney's Office, I should say, is reinforcing the paternalistic view that assumes that low-income folk, poor people, lack the capacity for autonomous decision-making. All they had to do is say, nah, Diddy, I'm going to pass. I don't want the money, right? That's all they had to do is say, nah, I'm good. I have too much integrity for that. I'll keep my job at Chick-fil-A. Somebody type Chick-fil-A in the chat room. I don't need that money. Same thing with these women who are traveling overseas to Dubai to get pooped on. Somebody type pooped on. So you're telling me these Arab billionaires and millionaires who are flying these women out, these women are inherently victims because they're poor, because their daddy wasn't rich, their mommy wasn't rich, and that $40,000 or $50,000 a year they're making on OnlyFans puts them in a deprived, poor state, and therefore they got to fly over to Dubai to get pooped on because they're in such dire straits. I want you to think about that. And on the flip side, we're going to sue these millionaires and billionaires in Dubai for some sort of international sex trafficking ring because they're paying people to come over there, and these women would not otherwise come over there to get pooped on, because who does that, right? But for the $50,000 that they're receiving. Think about that. Somebody said 40 or 50K is a bit. Okay, $4,000. They're flying over there on Spirit Airlines to get pooped on, okay, for $4,000.